Let's break down some of the very common do's and don'ts of early pregnancy and why. This is the Expecting series, looking to hopefully give partners the information they need to be the supporting loved one they know they want to be. Here at the New School OBGYN, it matters where you get your information. With that being said, my name is Eric Schmidt. I'm a board-certified OBGYN, and I wanted to talk about do's and don'ts of early pregnancy and why. The first one on today's list is hot tubs, and hot tubs can be an excellent way to rest, relax, and recover. However, when it comes to pregnancy, it can cause a hyperthermic state, and this hyperthermic state can lead to certain dire consequences in an early pregnancy, such as birth defects, specifically neural tube defects, also potentially can increase the risk of miscarriage. So certain situations such as hot tubs, saunas, hot yoga, these type of things in early pregnancy where the body can't regulate its own temperature well because of the excess heat around it, we generally don't recommend it within the first trimester. Now, with judicious use, things like hot tubs could be safe as long as somebody's able to regulate their own body temperature. Only for a few minutes of time be in the hot tub, for sure less than 10 minutes. Maybe only submerging parts of the legs at one time. And so there's different ways that someone could potentially work in some heat therapy while being pregnant. They just have to really be careful. And my recommendation to my patients usually is if they're having anything like a fever or anything like that already, I would avoid anything like hot therapy on top of that, because that's further going to put you at risk for the hypothermia. Hyperthermia. Moving on, the next one we'll talk about is changing the litter box. So felines, or cats, are the host for a parasite called toxoplasmosis. They get this from basically hunting outside or eating raw or undercooked meats, and this parasite grows within the cat system, and really only cats, and then it is excreted through their feces. Now, if a mom were to get this and she's pregnant and they don't already have immunity, this could potentially turn into some pretty dire consequences when it comes to the developing baby. However, if we do have some cat people in the audience, there are some ways that you can hopefully try to help this and modify this, and don't have to worry too much about this exposure on a day-to-day basis. Okay, as the support people, we're probably wanting to really take the initiative in taking over this chore so the pregnant person really doesn't have to worry about this at all. Again, with potential judicious and very safe hygiene practices, somebody could take care of their cat's litter box if they were pregnant. Now, they would likely have to do things such as wear gloves, very thoroughly wash their hands, and anything else that might touch the cat feces. You're also going to want to change the litter box every day, because it could take up to 1 to 5 days for the toxoplasmosis in the feces to become infectious. This will also decrease your risk. I would also recommend not feeding your cat any raw or undercooked meats at this time, as that could potentially have toxoplasmosis in it. We talked about previously that someone whose cat regularly goes outside would have a higher chance of being exposed to the toxoplasmosis. Now, if somebody keeps their cat indoors at all times, this would significantly decrease that risk. While it is perfectly safe to own a cat and be pregnant, I would advise against getting a new cat while pregnant or exposing yourself to kittens, because those cats and kittens will have a higher chance of not having that immunity to the toxoplasmosis and potentially exposing the pregnant mom. Also, situations to be careful in would be working in the garden or the soil outdoors, or the sandbox if you have one, because cats like to use these areas as their litter box. And so really want to make sure that if you're working in these areas, really to thoroughly wash your hands and decrease exposure. Maybe even cover the sandbox so the little kitties don't use that as their own litter box. Hopefully those tips are helpful in reducing your exposure to toxoplasmosis, because we don't want to neglect our little kitty friends. Dyeing hair in pregnancy is going to be the next point of conversation, because really there's no good evidence to show that it may cause potential adverse effects to a developing baby. However, with a lot of these chemical dyes, we do know that our body can absorb chemicals through the skin. And so the question is this safe throughout pregnancy? Probably. If you really want it to be safe, my recommendation would be to avoid chemical dyes in the first trimester. But each pregnant mom can evaluate the risk on a case-to-case basis, and so There might be some other alternative options out there, such as a henna dye, to try and get that same effect, but a little safer in the first trimester. And the last point of conversation that we're going to go through in this do's and don'ts of pregnancy is ibuprofen, or what we call NSAID use. This would be things like Motrin, Aleve, naproxen. Okay, we want to avoid using this not only in the first trimester, but throughout the pregnancy. There can be a lot of aches and pains and cramping, especially in the first trimester. And so often what we would reach for is the Midol or the Aleve or the Motrin to help with this cramping pain, and it does a really good job at doing that. However, in a pregnant mom, we really want to avoid this because it can do a couple things in the pregnancy. Early on, what it does, it might inhibit growth, normal growth of the baby's kidneys. Just as if adult would take too much ibuprofen, it can hurt the kidneys. Same said for a growing, developing baby. Also, later on in the pregnancy, it can cause decreased fluid, or what we call oligohydramnios. This oligohydramnios can have some consequences later on in the pregnancy, and so that's why we say generally no ibuprofen and NSAIDs of that kind throughout the entire pregnancy. We generally say no, but there can be small caveats to that though. In the mid-trimester, we can use ibuprofen for certain type things, but this is something you're really going to have to talk to your doctor about, and we still generally don't recommend it unless there's a big necessity. All right, that was a fun little episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned anything or if it was entertaining at all, go ahead and like, subscribe. We like to see all of those come in, and it motivates us to help continue to make future videos. All right, everyone, we'll catch you for the next one.